My name's Bailey. I'm going to kind of just give you a little rundown about what we're going to do, but we're going to have 4 performances, and it's going to be 3 different categories. So the first one is going to be a human video solo by Miss Brianna, but basically just a human video, first of all, is just like a drama to music where you just use your facials and your body language to show emotions and to tell a story. And so Brianna's human video solo is, it kind of takes you through the journey of a Jew during the time of Nazis and concentration camps, and you get to see, all the stuff that they had to go through. But the light at the end of the tunnel is that no matter what situation that you're in, or no matter how tough or how bad or impossible your situation seems, there's still that light at the end of the tunnel. Wow. And there's still someone with you, going with you every step of the way, and there's someone that's going to be your strength. And then we're going to have 2 large human videos, and the first one kind of follows the story of the Las Vegas shooting, and it takes you through kind of everything that happens up until that point, and then that point, and then kind of correlates it with the fall of man and how sin entered the world, and kind of how just there's all this madness and chaos that's happening in the world. But and then you get to see a girl follow kind of in the midst of that situation and that chaos, and then she kind of gets to flash back and follow Jesus throughout, his life and all his miracles that he did and his crucifixion, and kind of just see that through all the chaos and all the madness, there's still someone who is steadfast, and there's still someone that's there with you and that you can lean on, that's never going to change, and he's always there and he's always going to be the same. And our second human video, the large one, is it kind of gives you a little flip back and forth of, this is kind of hard to explain, sorry. I'm trying to do my best. If I confuse you more, hopefully you can watch it and it'll work itself out, but I'm trying not to confuse you. But this one kind of flips back and forth between astronauts in space and then kind of the creation of the world. They're in space and they see all these beautiful things, and then you get to see kind of God and our take on how creation happened. You get to see the land and the water and the fish and the birds and all the way up to Adam and Eve, and then you see the fall of man, and then it'll show you how that has affected the astronauts and how there's all this chaos now, and they feel out of control, and then they're saying we need help, we can't do this anymore. And then that's when you see the birth of Jesus, and it'll take you through his story and show that, like I said, even when there is chaos and you feel like you don't have any control, that God sent his son for us and for that purpose, and that we have that person to lean on to be there for us. And then our last thing is called a reader's theater, which is it's kind of like a spoken word or a dramatized reading of a script, which sounds really boring as I explain it right now, but I promise you it's not. It's one of my favorite things. It'll totally change your life. But it's called Don't Call Them, and it kind of takes you through the mindset of Jesus leading up to him being arrested and through the crucifixion, and how at any moment he could call down the army of angels and he could have been taken up away from that, out of the pain and out of that situation. But because he loves us so much, and because he had a greater purpose here on earth than to just leave and be gone, that he stayed and he was that sacrifice for us. So I hope you enjoy it, and Seth is going to come up here and give you a testimony.
I'm Seth, like she said, and I'm going to give you my testimony. For the first 8 years of my life, I struggled to find joy in anything, because I knew that when the joy was over, I would have to go home to my parents, who were either constantly fighting or high or drunk. And I never knew which one of them I was going to get, but either one hurt me. Each time they would fight, or they would get drunk, or say something they didn't mean, they would apologize and say, it's not going to happen again. I promise, things are going to be better. Never happened. Each time, I was getting disappointed and slowly breaking down more and more. All I wanted was a family who was going to unconditionally love me, or someone I could turn to when I was sad. When I was in, I think it was 3rd grade, I got invited to a church service type. It was like a mega sports camp thing. Does that make sense? It was a fun thing. And so I was going to go because I was like, oh, free food, I get to get out of the house, why not? And I went, and the title of the service was God Will Never Turn His Back on You. And I began to think, and I was like, that doesn't make sense to me. All that I've ever known is people turning their backs on me. All that I've ever known is people who are supposed to love me letting me down. So how could he never turn his back on me? And that night before I went to bed, I talked to God like I had never talked to him before. I said, if you love me and you never turn your back on me, why am I going through this? Why do my parents hate me? What have I done to deserve this? And I asked, please, make me want to wake up in the morning. Make this pain inside of me stop. Make my parents love me, or at least show me some kind of affection. And I began to pray that same prayer for about a week and a half. And each night the same prayer. And I was slowly losing hope when my parents set me down and told me that they were splitting up. And at the time I was like, okay, this is good. You know, maybe they can better themselves when they're apart. But no. My mom turned to more drugs, and my dad turned to gambling and pornography. And what they thought I didn't know, I knew, and it was slowly taking a turn on my emotions. I started to be sad all the time, but at school I was putting on a fake smile and telling everyone that I was okay. As I was holding it in, I was slowly breaking down more and more, until one day I sat down and I said, God, this is the last time I'm coming to you. Please, I'm begging you, take me out of this situation. And it wasn't even a couple of days later that I found out about a fun arts program. It was like a fine arts for littler kids. And I was like, it's an excuse to get me out of the house, so why not? And I went there, and the first practice was, a little scary because I hadn't really been around these people. But as we started to go on, I found a family where I had never had one. And I had found that there were people who would actually care about me and bring me closer to God instead of bringing me farther away from Him. And they began to bring me closer to Him, and it began to make it easier for me to go to Him on my own. And so after that season was over, I went back home, and I didn't have that anymore. So I kind of fell off a little bit. And once fine art season started back, it's been the best experience of my life because I get to be closer to God and minister to people and use my story to help other people who could have the same thing as me. So it's breathtaking because when all I wanted was someone to love me unconditionally, and it was right there the whole time, and all I had to do was step out and take it. So I encourage you to just step out in faith. It's the best decision you could ever make, and that's all I have.
And I'm going to be giving my testimony. So, you know, I was adopted, and my real parents, I've learned from my mom right now, is that, see, they were on drugs. I mean, my mom was on drugs like hardcore when I was in her stomach, so it messed me up really bad. Like, I have a club foot and like something wrong with my hip. But anyway, I was supposed to never, walk or nothing. But I'm a kid, so of course I'm gonna be like, dang, no one wants me now. I mean, like, I got thrown away by the only person that brought me into this world. You get thrown away by. Don't know how, like, that's hard. That's hard. And, well, I was like, of course, I'm going to think, like, dang, why did this happen to me? But it was just, recently, I'm 17 now, and recently I just started to think, like, dang, it's a blessing in disguise, pretty much. I got chosen, and then I was never supposed to be able to walk or nothing. And I got put into a family that was able to afford the surgeries I needed to be able to do what I can do. And fine arts is a big thing for me. Like, I just love it. I love doing it. And, every time before practice, we have a devotional. And, I've always been called to heal. Like, I've always thought I was called to do healing. And so I still think that, but I have a different version of it. Like, we were at practice one day, and we were just all sitting there. We just had an awesome prayer time, and we were sitting there, and Pastor Taylor goes, "Is anybody here called to do healing?" And I was about to raise my hand, and my friend Matthew raised his hand, and she said, "Trevor, go sit down, and Matt, you go touch prayer hands on." We prayed. We sat there and prayed for about at least almost 2 hours, like, straight up. And, okay, I'm sorry I said straight up. I've never had movement in my foot as much, like, the doctors couldn't even move my foot as much as Matthew did. He was, like, rolling it around. I was feeling tendons coming back. I was able to feel my muscles, and, like, that's just crazy to me. I've never been able to, like, I can feel my toes, and, like, there's no numbness on the top of my foot now. And I'm able to do this. I'm able to do this. I'm able to cheer. I'm able to do everything that I wanted to do. Thank you.
In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, for I have overcome the world.
Y'all still want me to come with you?
We're here by Mandalay Bay, gearing up for a night of country, love, and fun. We hope
and this is my testimony. The person you see standing here is a survivor. I didn't always think that of myself. I always see myself as a victim to child abuse and a witness to domestic violence. My dad was my abuser, the man that was supposed to love me more than life itself and never bring harm to me. I guess he didn't get the memo. I grew up with a dad that did drugs every day, ranging from marijuana to meth, along with pills and alcohol. The things he would do and say while high or drunk were awful and unforgettable. I had to endure all the times he called me worthless, or the times he looked right through me and saw nothing because of his blankness. His eyes were soulless and at times even heartless. I've seen my dad do unspeakable things to my mom, but I'm sorry, to do those things to a child is life-altering. So life-altering that I thought drugs and alcohol were the answer, and that I was destined to follow in his path. I became aggressive and temperamental. I thought after what I went through, the only answer was to end my life. Something I've never told anyone is that I'm a survivor of multiple suicide attempts. And for some reason, something saved me every single time. I guess I should say someone, God. God saved me from my depression. He saved me from ending my life. He even found us a home both times that we were homeless because my earthly father abandoned us. I didn't have the sanctuary as most did in church. The only time we went to church was because we were safe from the abuse. We were safe from the man hurting us because how dare he do it in public. I can go on all day about how bad it was, but instead I'll tell you about how I found serenity and sanctuary in a church where I wasn't afraid of my dad lashing out.
Yes.
A church that welcomed me with open arms, loving me from the very beginning.
Right.
A church where I was saved, baptized, and continually growing in.
Yes.
I was incredibly scared to go to church. It hurt too much to know that God let these things happen to me. But I later learned that he, in fact, didn't let those things happen to me, that it was the devil working through and in my dad.
Right.
I even learned that every single day that I hurt, God also hurt.
Yes.
It hurt him to see me in pain. And right now, God is helping me forgive my dad. Crazy, right? I struggled at first asking, how can I give a man that hurt me so much? A man that hurt my mom so much. I was shown that forgiving him was for me and my heart, and that God would continue to work in and through my dad.
Yes.
I realized that forgiving my dad wasn't for me or because it was the right thing to do. I mean, it is, don't get me wrong, but it was also for my little brother. He has a healthy relationship with my dad and has begged me for the same. God has shown me that maybe it wouldn't be such a bad idea. I am a survivor. I went from threatened and abused, then to a person ready to end her life. I am now a Christian with a head held high,
Yes.
all because God never gave up on me.
Right.
All because of the people he sent to influence my life and bring me closer to him. All because he loved me endlessly,
Yes.
even though I didn't deserve it. All because he chose me.
Right.
I'm not just a survivor, I'm an overcomer.
T-minus 90 seconds and counting. All systems are go.
God made heaven and earth. He created time, the sun, moon, stars, gravity to separate water from sky, ocean, and dry land. He formed birds, fish, and animals. In his own image, he created man and woman. All of this collectively to form life as we know it. Planet Earth.
Houston, Charlotte, do you copy?
We copy, Houston, and the view is absolutely breathtaking.
A falling star fell from your heart and landed in my arms. I screamed aloud. You're like starlight in the dark, endless smiles can't conceal you, and every glimmer is a spark, catching fire as you break through. And there's no heart unseen, there's no space between you and I, you and I. You are closer than the very oxygen I'm breathing in. Oh, I breathe you in.
used to drink and fight a lot, and sometimes, it would get so bad where me and my brother would have to go in his room and, lock the door. And fast forward a couple years, I was about 8, and, things were getting worse. I was acting like everything was okay, but, really it wasn't. I was just pushing it aside, pretending like it wasn't there. But one night, my mom, I heard the door open, so it was late at night, so I ran out there. And I saw my mom. She was getting in a car with somebody. I didn't know who it was, but she drove off. And I didn't really think nothing of it until about a week later. And I realized, I was like, well, I kept telling myself she was going to come back, but I kept being disappointed over and over again. About 2 months later, I just kind of was like, well, she ain't coming back. She doesn't love us anymore. And I tried to keep it together for my little brother, which was really hard because sometimes he would come up to me and ask, where's Mom? And I couldn't tell where she was. I used to go to my Mimi a lot to pray because, she told me to pray for him, and, sometimes I was like, well, he ain't real because she's not back, and so where are you? And, about 6 months later, so my dad, he got a letter, and it was from my mom, and that night we went to my granny's, my mom's side, and she was there, and she, she looked happy and healthy, and, during that time, though, she was on drugs, so when she got back, I was like, did she choose drugs over me? Were they more important to me? And, but now, she started bringing us to church, and things started getting better, and, she got on fire for God, and, my dad and my brother, they weren't exactly saved yet, and, eventually, my brother got saved, and my dad, he was saved, but he started getting on drugs about a year ago, and he, he said he was clean, and then he hurt us over and over again. About 2 months ago, he went to Teen Challenge, and he was supposed to be gone for 15 months. He came back after 2 weeks, and we were really, really mad at him and disappointed because we were like, wow. But coming to find out, just in that 2 weeks, he was completely clean. He was saved and all these things, and he was happy. And now we're all in church, and he came and he brought our family back together, and now we're all in church, and yeah.
Isn't God awesome? He is. I'm going to grab one of these stands. I want you to understand that the very first testimony that you heard by Seth, and then that very last one, they're 13 years old. That's very hard to get up in front of a group of adults that have lived a whole lot longer and experienced a whole lot more than what they have, and they're sharing their story with you. But, God is a God of restoration, isn't He? He's a God of restoration, and when you hear their stories and how many of them told you, I think all of them told you, that they had a parent or two that were absent. And they found God not because of the parent making them, but because God was seeking them out. And they found Jesus, and they were able to impact their families, and now they're getting to impact you. So that's amazing. I'm just going to share with you for a moment kind of something that God has laid on my heart for you all. And it's just going to be brief, but as I was studying and praying about where the direction of this service, God just began to speak that we need to allow His life to infiltrate every area of our lives, his life to infiltrate every area. And throughout Scripture, we read about the sacrifices that were made in order to make us right with God. And in the Old Testament, they had to come before Christ and bring a perfect, spotless lamb or goat or bull or whatever it was and sacrifice it. And then someone had to go into the Holy of Holies on their behalf for them to receive their forgiveness. So the spilling of the blood of the sacrifice meant that life was leaving the previous inhabitant to ensure that it would cover and protect the spiritually damaged portion of their being and then revive it. In Leviticus 17:11 it says, "For the life of a creature is in the blood, and I have given it to you to make atonements for yourselves on the altar. It is the blood that makes atonement for one's life." And so, in the Old Testament, when they saw the blood, that was kind of the outward sign of their outward cleansing. And then it continued on as they would go into the Holy of Holies, the priest would go into the Holy of Holies and go in on their behalf. And so atonement here actually meant that as the blood would spill, it was literally covering of their sin. And so as I read this and I read that passage that the life of a creature is in the blood, I began to wonder why Scripture says that. Why exactly he says the life is in the blood. And so I am actually a dental hygienist by day and a creative pastor by weekend and evening and afternoon, and all the time I'm in ministry. But I love anatomy and I love biology and things like that, and so I learned a lot of this. And so just bear with me because I'm going to throw some facts out at you. But blood is a liquid connective tissue that contains red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets, and plasma. It's actually the only connective tissue in your entire body that is fluid. That's not just a solid, okay? Red blood cells carry oxygen from your lungs to the rest of your body, and then they bring back the carbon dioxide back to your lungs so they can get reoxygenated. Hang with me. I know you feel like you're in biology class. White blood cells can be one of several different types, but serve as the first line of defense against foreign invaders. They destroy parasites, they neutralize histamine and allergic reactions, and they contain neurotransmitters like serotonin, which is a chemical our body produces to regulate mood, behavior, appetite, digestion, memory, sleep. White blood cells are able to leave the boundaries of the vessel to attack and destroy foreign invaders. Blood transport waste that's produced in your digestive tract and kidney to be removed from the body, but at the same time it takes the essential nutrients, vitamins, minerals, and it distributes them throughout your entire body. It regulates your body temperature, and it balances electrolytes and your pH so you don't get too salty, if you know what I'm saying, believers, so you don't get too salty. According to Dr. James Rudd of Cambridge University, after about 2 or 3 minutes with no blood flow to the brain, you suffer severe, irreparable damage. And after about 6 minutes, it begins to die. Our bodies cannot live without blood. No matter how significant the other organs are, without the blood, they are rendered useless. The brain can have all of the thoughts and all of the reasoning and all of the emotions. The heart can pump, the blood all over the body, and the feet can move, and the kidneys can get rid of stuff. But without the blood, no matter how significant it is, it's rendered useless. In Hebrews 9:11-15, it says, "But when Christ came as high priest of the good things that are now already here, he went through the greater and more perfect tabernacle that was not made by human hands. That is to say, is not a part of this creation. He did not enter by means of the blood of goats and calves, but he entered the most holy place once for all by his own blood, thus obtaining eternal redemption. The blood of goats and bulls and the ashes of a heifer sprinkled on those who are ceremonially unclean sanctify them so that they are outwardly clean. How much more then will the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself unblemished to God, cleanses our consciences from the acts that lead to death so that we may serve the living God. For this reason, Christ is the mediator of a new covenant, that those who are called may receive the promised eternal inheritance, now that he has died as a ransom to set them free from the sins committed under the first covenant." So what this is saying is that the original sacrifices were made so that you could be clean externally, only made spiritually new by the act of the priest entering the Holy of Holies on your behalf. But when Christ came, he became the atonement or the covering, both internally and externally. But then he took it a step further and he said, now we're promised eternal inheritance as children of God. As a child of God, we're promised favor and righteousness through his Spirit. So he didn't just shed his blood for your sins. He shed his blood so that you can have his life poured into every situation and aspect of your being. Not just so for the forgiveness of your sin, but so that he can cover every situation in your life. In Romans 8:15-17, it says, the Spirit you received does not make you slaves so that you live in fear again. Rather, the Spirit you received brought about your adoption. And I just want to pause there because, as Trevor mentioned earlier, adoption doesn't mean that somebody abandoned you. It means that somebody chose you. You were meant for something. The world tried to do something else, but somebody chose you. And so as hard as the enemy was trying, Jesus already chose you before you even came to know him. He had chosen you, and he was just waiting on you to choose him back. That's good. That's not even in my notes. Yeah. The Spirit you received brought about your adoption into sonship. And by him we cry, Abba, Father. The Spirit himself testifies with our spirit that we are God's children. Now, if we are children, then we are heirs, heirs of God and co-heirs with Christ. If indeed we share in his sufferings, in order that we may also share in his glory.
I know there's not another way. 33 years culminating in this moment.
I was blind from the day I was born. The first face I ever saw was the face of the Savior.
Stones poised to kill, but he stopped them with words in the sand.
Even J.R.'s my dad thought I was dead, but he said I was just asleep.
It was just in preparation for this right now. But yet, here I am pleading for the cup to pass. One word from my lips could summon an army, but I won't call them.
Don't call him!
Sorrow and agony tighten their grip. I know they're coming.
Judas? Arrest him.
I feel the cold kiss of betrayal.
Don't touch him, he's innocent! Please, stop!
A whisper could save me.
But Jesus, don't call them. For I have a dream of forgiveness and redemption, a dream of equality for all men. Don't call them.
I won't call them.
My ear can't have it! My ear!
Before he can ask, I hear what was heard. I go, for it is not my will, but his being done.
Jesus of Nazareth, you stand accused. How do you plead? Why won't you answer? Can't you hear what they're asking?
Defend yourself, Jesus!
Are you not the king of the Jews? Will you have Jesus or Barabbas? Give us Barabbas! Barabbas!
A whisper could save me.
But please, Jesus, don't call them. 7 years ago, a nation was born, and now it is torn down the middle. You have called me to emancipate the slave. Don't call them.
I won't call them. My hands are tethered to a wooden post. The whip cracks as it digs into my flesh. My vision goes white with pain.
No! My son! Stop! Please!
I feel the warm trickle of liquid as my skin tears from my bones. A pool of my blood acting as a barrier between my battered body and the ground below.
That's my son! Please! Please!
I feel her pain, even through mine. As the whip lands again, I lift my eyes to her. I know a word could stop this.
Stop! My son!
I'm so sorry.
But I need you. I don't know why, but he's got a gun to my head. He's asking for my gun. Please don't call them.
My skin hangs off of me. I'm soaked in my own blood. The thorns pierce my brow.
Here is the king of the Jews.
Ha! 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 All is black for a moment. My heartbeat is faint, but the work isn't finished.
Crucify him! Crucify him! Carry your cross!
I collapse beneath the weight of the cross. Splinters on exposed bone. The pain is so great I can barely see.
Get up and walk!
Crucify him! Save yourself, Jesus.
All of heaven is awaiting my call. Angels, stand at attention.
He won't save himself.
1 step, 1 inch is all I can manage. The pain is more than I can take.
Heave ho, Jesus, that cross will carry itself.
Now for his hand, now for his feet.
The nails ripping through tendons, the sound of crushing bones are nothing compared to the severing of my nerves. I am stretched out, nailed to the cross, paying for sins I did not commit. I know the angels are awaiting my call.
Don't call them. I don't know if you're real, but my pain is. These people don't care about my pain, about my life. They don't know that I live in a prison. But someone said you love even people like me. If you can hear me, if you love me like they say you do, don't call them.
I won't call them.
Raise them up!
Where is your God now, Son of Man?
Each breath feels like the end, but I cling to life in this moment.
Cast your lot till I have the King's robe.
Heart to the Christ, save yourself and us.
Do you not fear God? He's done nothing to deserve this. Remember me, Jesus. Remember me.
Blood rushing from all parts of me. I'm unrecognizable as a man, but I know He is why I come to this moment. He will be with me today in paradise. I choose to be His sacrifice. I will not call them.
I love you!
Lord, I'll stop Tommy.
Don't call them!
Don't
call them! Don't call them!
Finish.
Yes.
If you would go ahead and stand with me. If you have come to know Jesus and have come into relationship with Him, you are a child of Christ, and the spilling of His blood meant new life for you spiritually, but also so that you could share in the glory of His life being infiltrated in every situation in your life. And you know, some of you may be here and you're like, I'm doing okay on my own. I don't really need I don't need God. I'm doing just fine. I'm going to work every day. I'm doing my thing. I've got my family. But I mean, let me just tell you, you may be doing okay on your own, but with God, you can be doing great. You can be doing amazing things that are beyond your own ability. And you know, just like the organs that we talked about, they can only be sustained for so long. Your life can only be sustained for so long here on this earth without Jesus. And down to the cellular makeup of our blood, He came to be the first defense against the things that try to attack and destroy you. Disease. Where there's death, He breathes life into you. And while He is moving and cleaning waste out of you, He's holding you all together as a connective tissue. He's releasing His Spirit into you so that you can find joy and so that you can find rest. He's not confined to the limitations that we may put on Him, but He's ready to protect you and keep you through every season of your life. You see, His blood didn't mean death, it meant life, even down to the physical properties, because He's an intimate God. Because when Jesus was hanging on the cross, it wasn't in a position of defeat. It was in a position of victory, because He was already pouring life over everything that you would come into contact with in your life. He was covering your health in life. He was covering your finances in life. He was covering your unsafe family members in life. He was taking all of your brokenness and mending it. You see, He wasn't losing when He was hanging on the cross. He was winning, but He was doing it in such a way that He deceived Satan into thinking that his most desired victory was actually His greatest defeat. His most, I don't know if you heard that, but He was hanging on the cross and Satan thought, you know what, I've won. This is the victory I've been waiting for all this time. And Jesus was so wise that He fooled Satan into thinking that this victory would be the greatest of His whole life. But in reality, it was His greatest defeat, because as He hung there, just as they were portraying, as He hung there in pain and in agony, bearing every stripe, as he took the cracks from the whip and blood was oozing from every part of His body, and he wasn't even recognizable, and He wore the thorn of crowns on His head, and he was weeping in agony. Satan thought he had won, but in reality, it was Jesus' greatest victory, because He was pouring life over every situation. And just like Pastor Chad said earlier, that if you could imagine those cracks of those whips landing every single time they were for you and for your situation. They were for you so that when you're going through things in this life, it doesn't have to be something that you bear on your own. You have an advocate with the Father, and His name is the Holy Spirit, and He's living and dwelling within you. His life, the same life that was sustaining Jesus as he hung from the cross, is the same life that is living within you today. The same blood that is living and flowing within you, down to the genetic makeup. Jesus was that detailed about how much He loves you, that His blood is the life that sustains every part of you, not just your salvation, but your healing, not just your salvation, but your finances, your unsaved family members. So as we stand here today, I am going to have it's a really simple altar call. If you don't know Jesus, if you don't have that life, that blood pulsing through your veins, that He is the one that is in control of everything. He bore the stripes on His back. He shed His blood so that you can not only have healing but salvation in Him. So if that's you, I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand. I'm just going to ask you to move forward. If you don't have a relationship with Jesus,